Rob and I are on a road trip to Michigan to celebrate my mom's birthday, and we decided to listen to the audiobook for On the Come Up. I'm also following along in the book as the audiobook goes.
Nerd.
Shut up. We're only on about page 60, but so far I really love the representation for parents who have criminal histories, who have been addicted to substance use, who have their bodies covered in tattoos and just don't meet the stereotypical image of what a good parent is. Because in Bree's neighborhood, her neighborhood is full of parents who have criminal histories and parents who don't fit the mold of what a good parent should be. And I just love that we're getting representation for them in a young adult fiction novel, because I think it's so damaging for kids to be reading fiction novels and to never see parents that aren't perfect. So far there's a lot of references to classic rappers and classic rap music, which is really beautiful to see. And thus far there's been some really decent queer representation, and I made this comment with They Hate You Give, and I'm going to echo it here, that it's beautiful to see Black kids in a book that are using their Black vernacular and talking about Black culture, because we were told for so many years that Black books wouldn't be publishable and couldn't be mainstream if they didn't whitewash themselves. We were told that Black books wouldn't be popular if they featured too much of Black culture. So it's really beautiful to see that On the Come Up has so many elements of Black culture in it, because it just proves all of those people wrong. And this isn't a spoiler because it's on the book jacket, but we find out that Bree's father was murdered, and he used to be a very famous rapper. And I have a feeling that the circumstances surrounding Bree's father's murder are definitely not done, and that she's gonna have to kind of fight for her life in the same way that he did, because the people who killed him weren't caught. So I'm actually really hoping that there is some intersectionality between his death and her own safety as she rises as a rap queen in her community. So we'll see. And also the rap battles so far have been really, really fun to read and listen to. Okay, so real quick, I'm in my mama's spare bedroom. It's a little messy, so don't mind us. We need to talk about On the Come Up. Rob and I got about 60% done with this book on our drive, and this book is giving me my life back to me. Bree and her family are really struggling, really hurting for money, and she wants desperately to make a name for herself as a rapper, not just because of who her father was, but because that's her passion, and she's trying so hard to make a name for herself that isn't attached to her daddy. I don't want to talk too much about the storyline because you'll get that when you read the book. I want to talk about the themes and the messages that I'm seeing so far. Like The Hate You Give, this story is continuing with the theme of drug use and drug selling in Black cultures, specifically within the ghetto, and that is such an important theme to discuss. Despite the fact that it is wrong, so many people, especially young folks in the ghetto, don't have any money, don't have access to good jobs, and the jobs that they do have don't pay them enough to support themselves and their family. This is why a lot of Black youth get enticed by drug selling in the first place. And I appreciate that that is represented, because so often we don't talk about that when we are condemning these kids and sending them to jail. We're not talking about why they were enticed to do it in the first place. So that is super important. It's an important piece of the conversation that needs to be included when we discuss these things. Okay, I'm gonna need you to get down. Do you want to see him? Doesn't he look just like Raven? This is Midnight. And he actually likes me. He's very nice. He purrs. Look at him. Isn't he a looker? And he just lets me hold him. You cute. The book is also dealing with the criminalization of Black girls in school. This topic is so important, one that I have never seen discussed in a contemporary novel before, and it is a real reality for many, many, many Black girls. What do I mean when I say criminalization of Black girls in school? This refers to the ways that Black girls, Black youth are targeted by security guards, teachers, other students, and also leadership figures in the school, such as the principal, and treated as a threat well before they actually, if ever, become one. This means that Black girls are far more likely to be subject to extra, more humiliating, in-depth public security searches that other kids don't have to go through. This happened very recently, actually, where 4 Black girls were strip searched at their school because they were laughing together in the cafeteria, and school officials decided that they were laughing because they were on drugs. Ultimately, it discourages Black youth from wanting to continue with school, from feeling safe in school, from being welcomed in school, from being able to participate in school activities because other kids have seen the way that leadership figures treat them. We model the behavior that we are shown. So if security guards, the principal, our teachers are treating Black kids like threats, other kids at school are going to treat those black kids like threats too. And I want to talk about this because this is something that happened to me quite a bit throughout my elementary school, middle school, and my high school experience. When I was 12 years old, my mother went to my school because I came home and I was always crying, telling her about how mean the teachers were to me, how hard they were on me. And I remember she went into a meeting with them. She was there for 2 hours arguing with them about how they were treating me. And at the end of it, she ultimately came back home and said to me, "You have to be perfect. You can give these teachers no reason to ever, ever, ever pull you into the office or give you detention because they're looking for one." And Bree goes through the same thing. She actually experiences brutality from one of the security guards at school where he decides he wants to search her backpack for no reason. And, he slams her on the ground, gets his knee on her back, and, humiliates her and traumatizes her in front of the entire school. And while that thankfully has never happened to me, I can tell you, starting from age 8 all the way up to age 18, every single instance of something very similar happening to me at school. So I've been an avid reader my whole life, and there was one time when I was 8 years old that I won this reading competition for having read the most, and that meant I got to meet one of my favorite authors who was coming to school as part of this book fair, and I got to have lunch with her. And you guys, I cannot explain how excited and elated I was to meet this woman. So I went up to my teacher at lunch and I was like, "Hey, I'm ready to go to my lunch." And she wouldn't let me go to the lunch because she said that I had been too distracting in class that day. She was referring to me raising my hand and answering questions. She was referring to me engaging with what she was saying. It was okay for white kids to raise their hand and answer questions and be intelligent and engaged with the subject matter. But for me, whenever I did it, this teacher perceived it as me being rambunctious and taking up space in the classroom and talking out of turn. You know what I mean? Even though I was raising my hand and answering her lesson plan questions. There was another time when I was 9 years old that a boy, I think his name was Luke, was always talking out of turn. And our voices did not sound alike. And one day, the teacher just kind of snapped and she was like, Jesse, I'm gonna send you to the principal's office if you don't stop, talking in my lesson. And I hadn't been speaking at all. I was just sitting there and I was like, I didn't say anything. I was like, "What are you talking about? I didn't say anything." And she was like, "Don't talk back to me. You're gonna go to the principal, blah, 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 blah," And I'm getting mad because I'm I wasn't speaking. I was listening to you. And then other kids started chiming in too and were like, "Jesse wasn't saying anything. What are you talking about? It was Luke." And I will never forget how when the teacher realized that she was wrong, instead of apologizing to me, she looked at me like I was the devil. This woman looked at me like I had played some grand trick and she was angry that she couldn't send me to the principal's office. And while these things are very small, right, they're not a big deal, but when you add them up all together throughout a lifetime of education, they're humiliating. And I can absolutely tell you that they influenced the way that kids treated me and perceived me at school. And I think, unfortunately to this day, I'm a pretty quiet person outside of BookTube. I think that a part of the reason why I'm so shy and why I don't look people in the eye is because I was discouraged from interacting and speaking in school. There were other kids in my school who just so happened to not be black, doing all kinds of threatening shit, actually selling drugs, actually sneaking out of school and getting high and doing all this other shit, actually creating disruptions in the classroom that weren't in detention as often as I was. If I so much as rolled my eyes, I got detention. If I so much was as late to class, I would get written up, which is understandable, but I noticed that I got written up way more than my white counterparts. And of course, God forbid I bring this up. I think a lot of black girls are gonna relate to the messages in this book about how black kids are treated in school because it is real, y'all. And if you are one of those kids who hasn't experienced this, please listen to us when we talk about having actually gone through this shit because it is real. It's not just in a book. Angie Thomas wrote this to show that this actually happens every day to black kids. And not just black kids, certainly we don't have a monopoly on being criminalized, but it happens a hell of a lot to us. So I'm gonna get going. It is time for my mother's birthday lunch. I'm so excited to take her. I'm taking her to her favorite restaurant of all time, and she doesn't know that we're going, and I can't wait. All right, y'all, till next time. Hey y'all, I am back from Michigan. My mama's birthday was beautiful. She had so much fun. And now I am on the verge of finishing on the come up. Bree has a lot of residual anger left over from her being assaulted at school. In her anger, she decides to record and release a song. And basically in the song, she kind of goes at everybody. She goes at the security guards who attacked her. While the community is praising her for writing and releasing this song that talks about the hood rich, glamorous rap lifestyle, her close friends, her mother, her brother, her best friends, and her aunt are all vehemently against this, and the song has gotten her into trouble with some local gangs. But of course, there are some white parents who are using this song to imply that the brown and black kids that are being bused into their school from poor neighborhoods are ruining the school. And so it brings up this standard that a lot of brown and black kids have to go through, which says, hey, you need to be perfect in order to prove that you have a place here. You know, you can't mess up in any way or else it's gonna reflect badly on the other dark-skinned kids, and then we're all gonna be in heat because of it. Which is like an enormous amount of pressure to put on a child to say that you essentially can't do anything that might be seen as criminal because it's your responsibility to shape the way that white people view your whole race. You know, black rappers and black youth are also stigmatized because of what rappers are saying on the radio, when in reality, the people that are the #1 listeners and the #1 purchasers of, you know, that mainstream hood rap music are white kids in the suburb. It's funny because modern radio stations often won't play rap that doesn't talk about living a hood lifestyle. So many rappers feel incredibly pressured to talk about those things in their music just so they can get airplay, because that's the only thing that people are actually buying and supporting. And yet we turn around and put all the responsibility and blame on those rappers for making that music in the first place when it's the only music that we're willing to pay for. I find that so interesting, so I think it's really cool that that is represented in the book. I'm getting really freaked out for her because I have a feeling that this song is gonna get her into a lot of real physical trouble with the gangs in her neighborhood. Her father was killed by one of those gangs for making similar music, and so I feel like there's a lot of foreshadowing that somebody is going to die, and I'm hoping that we get some more insight onto her father's death. I only have about 50 pages left of this book, so I will check in with you as soon as I finish it. Hi, it me. I finally got dressed. What up, y'all? I have officially completed On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I also got dressed. I also had a little lunch. Adulting at its finest. I'm about to betray and upset so many of you because I've seen some reviews, a lot of 5-star reviews for this book, and this book is not getting 5 out of 5 stars from me. If you want to know absolutely nothing about the end of this book, definitely click off of this video now. I'm not giving any spoilers, but I will talk a little bit about how some things disappointed me, so if you want absolutely nothing that could kind of be considered a spoiler, it's been real. I'll see you in my next one. This book was on track to be a 5-star read. It had so much going for it. Angie Thomas had laid out so many critical elements to the plot that had real potential, and then they just went nowhere. First of all, we get zero closure surrounding the death of Bree's father. Where was the rapping? Okay, I was promised lots of rap battles. There was like one. There was one rap battle in this book. I find that highly disappointing. I think it would have been really cool if Angie Thomas had told some of the chapters in verse. That would have been sick because Bree is a rapper. Like, she is going to think in verses. For example, there are times where she's called a hoodlum, and in her head she goes, hoodlum, 2 syllables, and then talks about what that word means to her. I feel like she should have utilized the rap element of this story so much more. Anytime a person picks up an author's second book expecting it to be exactly the same as the first, like you're gonna be setting yourself up for failure. This isn't The Hate You Give. It's a completely different story. There are definitely very similar themes and elements, but it's its own book entirely. So if you're hoping to enjoy this book, definitely don't go into this thinking it's The Hate You Give Part 2, because it's not. That all being said, I absolutely thought that every single character in The Hate You Give was pivotal. I thought that they were complete and whole, even outside of Star as the narrator, and I didn't really feel this about On the Come Up. I didn't really feel like the characters in this book were ones that could have had their own storylines. They certainly had their own hopes and interests and personalities and dreams, but I just didn't feel that they were as important to the story as literally all of the side characters were in The Hate You Give. And final issue with this book is Angie Thomas took so much time to build the first and the second part of the novel and to set up the last part of the novel. Like, this is a chunky monkey, okay? It is very character driven. And then the ending, the resolution, the denouement of the book happened in literally 10 pages, okay? Everything that had been talked about thus far, the criminalization of black girls at school, the violence that Bree experienced at the hands of security guards, her mother's drug use, her family's financial situation, her rap career, everything that had kind of been set up just resolved within 10 pages. And I was like, what the hell kind of rush-ass ending. It was as if Angie Thomas was just really into writing, you know, she was in her groove, and then she looked at the calendar and was like, oh shit, this book is due tomorrow, and then just whipped up an ending out of nowhere. But because she is bringing some real subject matter that really isn't touched in YA contemporaries, and there was a lot I liked about this book, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 stars. The ending just kind of want to strangle it a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And that is it for this video. Let me know if my review turned you off. I really hope that it didn't, because I would love for you all to read this book. I want to hear your thoughts on it too. And if you've already read it, let me know if you agree or disagree with me, because I'm always down for some open dialogue. Thank you so much for watching this messy ass book diary. I appreciate every single one of you who are out there, and I will see you in my next video.